Thokozani emakosini kamaku. Thank you for joining me for another video. In this video, we will be talking about the ancestral spirit UMNDAU. I will not be going in depth with regards to the spiritual aspects to number one, protect the sacred art, and number two, not to cause any confusion with anyone's journey, because as much as I might have UMNDAU, you might have the same but might originate from a different area on the continent. And without further ado, let's get into the history. The Ndau are an ethnic Shona sub-ethnic group which inhabits the areas in southeastern Zimbabwe in the districts of Chipinge and Chimanimani, in which they are natives. They are also found in parts of Bikita in the Zambezi Valley in central Mozambique, all the way to the coast and in central Malawi. The natives are described in detail to have already been occupying parts of Zimbabwe and Mozambique in the 1500s by João dos Santos. Ancient Dao people met with the Khoisan during the first trade with the Arabs in Mapungubwe, and it's attributed to the Kalanga people, not Ndao. The ancient Dao people are historically related to the Karanga tribe and were already in Mozambique and parts of Zimbabwe by the 1500s. Because of the large-scale conquests of the Ngunis in the 1820s, a lot of the Ndau ancestry evolved to include the Nguni bloodline and ancestry. This is evident in the wealth of Nguni words in the Ndau language, Nguni names and surnames. In the 1820s, during a period of severe drought, northern Nguni armies, particularly the Zulu, Swazi, Ndwandwe, Kumalo, and Ndebele, people who speak related Bantu languages and inhabited Southeast Africa from Cape Province to southern Mozambique, began to migrate to Mozambique from what is now South Africa. One Nguni chief, Ngaba, established a short-lived kingdom inland from Sofala, but in 1837 he was defeated by Soshangane, a powerful Nguni rival. Eventually, Soshangane established his capital in the highlands of the Middle Sabi River in what is present-day Zimbabwe. The Nguni Shangans established the Gaza kingdom in southern Mozambique and subjugated many of the Ndau people who were already living in that area. This history shows that the Nguni invaders had slain a lot of the Ndau men and taken their wives. Due to this, a lot of the Ndau people have a lineage with Nguni influences. This was further cemented by the intermarriages between Nguni and Ndau. The more appropriate term to describe the resultant group, including the modern Ndau, is Shangan. The Ndau culture also evolved to include Nguni practices in the same that many Nguni words became part of the Ndau language. According to Earthy, when the Ndau people were conquered by the Ndwendwe Ngunis, some of the Ndau people took refuge among the Chopi people who had amassed rifles from the Portuguese in order to protect themselves. It is suggested by some that some of the Chopi people remained independent of the Nguni Gaza Empire. In forming the Gaza Empire, Soshangane and his Nguni impis overran and incorporated the Tsonga, Shongonono, Ngomane, Portuguese, Hlengwe, Nyai, Ronga, Shona, Senga, Chopi, as well as the Ndau tribes in a new nation with the people collectively called Shangani. With the prolonged drought, the rise of Gaza, the dominance of the slave trade, and the expansion of Portuguese control in the Zambezi Valley, the once mighty African chieftaincies of the Zambezi region declined. In their place, valley warlords established fortified strongholds at the confluence of the major rivers, where they raised private armies and raided for slaves in the interior. North of the Zambezi, Islamic slave traders rose to power from the base in Angoche, and the Yao chiefs of the north migrated south to the highlands along the Shire River, where they established their military power. As a result of this settlement in Chipinge, some Ndau Shangan settled in what is now modern-day Mozambique. Historically, through hundreds of years of mixing with other Shona groups, the Ndau language and customs evolved. Intermarriage with the conquering Ngunis added a Nguni flavor to the language and the culture. Ancient Dao could be one of the most ancient form of all modern-day Nguni languages. It is possible that the ancient Dao are one of the first ancestral tribes of the Ngunis, similarly to the Mtetwas, Lala, and Debe, who are descended from the Donga Tekelas. The Ndau people are also known to be very good herbalists. They are openly expressed by Mozambicans to be the most feared black magicians. Historical records describe the Ndau as humble and non-violent people, and yet are known to use magic when offended or to deal with transgressors. Their spirits are also known to fiercely revenge deaths due to murders or other unjust means. They are able, therefore, to fight injustices despite their small and non-violent nature, using sorcery and magic. It has to be noted that the traditional Ndau identify themselves as one, for they regard Musika Vatu, Mulambo as their common ancestor. Even though they identify themselves by different names and surnames, such as Moyana, which means sheep, they at the end of the day consider themselves to be Tsiva, for they are Musikavatu's children. To this day, Musikavatu has great respect and renown as a rainmaker and is considered the earthly embodiment of the creator of the universe, Muari, Musikavatu, or Musikavanu, as the creator is commonly known amongst the Shona. It has to be borne in mind that the Monamutapa Empire was founded by Nyatsimba Mutota, who was of the Tsiva totem, as he was the son of Tsiva Musikavanu, who had left Great Zimbabwe after its abandonment by Musikavanu due to transgressions that had been committed by all peoples against Musikavantu's commands, or Siko Miko. And so we have the Ndau people classified as the Bantu Shona. Primary religion is ancestral worship, which is fine, whatever. The country originating from Zimbabwe and Mozambique predominantly, but we know that they're in Malawi, they're in Zambia, and South Africa. Okay, let's move on. So I came across this online. I didn't see the presentation of Mr. Emmanuel Sithole, but the presentation description is interesting. I thought I should add it here so that we can learn, because he speaks to a different spiritual aspect of the Ndau ancestors. So let's read. The Ndau are a Bantu ethnic group in the Zambezi Valley in central Mozambique to the coast and eastern Zimbabwe. In both countries, Ndau religious life is similarly predicated on continuing relationships between the living and the dead. A symbiotic relationship exists between the spirits and the living, who are always extricably, mutually, and coherently integrated in a single cosmos. On one hand, Vandao, Dao people depend on spirits of ancestors, spirits of Nguni warriors, spirits of young girls, spirits of African liberation fighters, Mozambican, Zimbabwean spirits for healing, protection, guidance, fertility, and security during times of personal, familial, and communal crises. Drawing on ethnographic data collected from both Mozambique and Zimbabwe, the study examines the extent to which indigenous elements of spirituality continue to sustain, reinforce, and reflect the multiple and sometimes contested notions of Ndau identities in both countries. Because most Vandau, including staunch Christians, have strongly believed in the spirit world, which conveniently is always in contact with the human world through spirit possession, the study investigates the level to which both local and foreign spirits continuous engagement with Vandau have tied and kept Ndau people together through cultivating personal, familial, communal, and even transnational relationships among Mozambicans and Zimbabweans. Despite their countries' geopolitical separation, it establishes that the spirits have helped influence, recreate, reshape, reinforce, and solidify shared transnational Ndau identities, histories, cultures, and languages that have thus far successfully defied the arbitrary, drawn artificial international boundaries that separates Mozambique and Zimbabwe. So, long story short, continuous engagement with the ancestors or this ancestral spirit has helped to retain unity with regards to culture and languages, helping to defy the colonial system being forced on us. So, the Ndau language. Ndau, also called Chindau, Nzau, Njau, Sofala, Southeast Shona, Chindanda, is a Bantu language spoken by 1.4 million people in central Mozambique and southeastern Zimbabwe. The major varieties in Mozambique are called Shanga and Danda, that in Zimbabwe is simply called Ndau. Ndau is part of a continuum, meaning a dialect continuum with other neighboring varieties of the Shona group, that is Manika, Garanga, and has often been included as a Shona dialect. The 2013 Constitution of Zimbabwe accorded Ndau status as an official language. So we learn that number one, the ancient Dao may be one of the oldest ancestors of the Nguni people, but also had intermarriages and conquest later on to attribute to the common ancestry between the Nguni and the Dao people. I highlight this because it has spiritual significance when it comes to initiation. Number two, we learned that the ancestral spirit has the ability to avenge itself, which also has a huge significance with respect to initiation. Number three, it is a revered ancestral spirit due to its power. Ndau people are in general revered for their power. So to continue our study on the ancestral spirit, we will take a look at Dan. He is the first born from Jacob, and Bila, who is Rachel's handmaiden. So as we know that the eastern side, Mozambique is on the eastern coast of Africa. Dan is a lion's cub leaping out from Bashan. I put this here because Bashan is basically where Mozambique is located. Number two, The name Dao means lion, okay, in the Ndau and the Shona languages. Here, Gogo Ntombiamanzi says, the Ndau people identify with the lion as their totem. The name Ndau itself means lion in the Ndau and Shona languages. Genesis 49 reads, Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. So to be a judge means you're a lawmaker. I spoke of it as in the order of Melchizedek. And to judge his people, meaning that you would be able to judge what kind of spirit is governing them or is influencing them. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path, that biteth the horse heels, so that the rider shall fall backward. I have waited for thy salvation, O Lord. So Ndao is symbolized by snakes predominantly, okay? There are other ways for them to appear in your dreams or visions, but it's predominantly snakes. It is a predominantly water spirit, okay? It is a king discerner of spirits. Here we have Abraham from the Legends of the Jews, where I highlighted it. It says that Abraham taught his sons the art or how to hold sway over demons and spirits. This means that this is the work of UMNDAU, okay? In order to judge a people, you need to be able to determine what spirit is functioning within a person or within a group or within the entire people. Okay, so it is the king discerner of spirits. That's why you will go Uyofemba. Numbers 10 reads, Dan's troops went last, marching behind their banner and serving as the rear guard for all the tribal camps. All right, so Dan, I want to point out, or not Dan, excuse me, the spirit of Ndau, the ancestral spirit, is usually the last of the ancestral spirits to appear. They are kingly in that respect, and the kings generally appear last, but nonetheless they are warrior spirits. Okay, predominantly all spirits are warriorship in their very own right. So thank you for joining me for another video. I hope you learned much. I didn't go in depth. I cannot go in depth. I'm prohibited, but Tozani Imakosini.